You're a geek.
Yes,
Hi, MacKenzie.
Hi. Can you guys hear me okay?
We can hear you.
I have
perfect.
great questions for you.
I don't know if Locy's chiming in, but Locy went behind him on our last episode and had, pictures and helmets and all kinds of other stuff. And he said we needed to work on our background. And I was told by one of our lovely admirers that we should be more professional and I should be more presidential on these. So I'm presidential.
Go.
Come on, I went with Taiwanese cloth behind me. Come on.
Lovely. Love it. All right, so we're recording. We're official.
Oh, there's Locy. So.
Oh, what's he got behind him now? Like a frame?
Oh no, his background is very important to him.
I'm here. Hold on. Don't worry.
Yeah, no, we need the background. We can't officially start till we see you.
Good evening, America. Good evening. Oh, look at that. I like that. Now you're stepping up your game, Chris. I like it.
I'm trying. You set such a high bar that I had to try something. It was either that or I can try this one, but I've never really been a goalie.
And that one looks funny.
Yeah. Me and goal just isn't a good fit. So the other one, and Kolon will appreciate this one. I could pretend that I'm in the crowd for a 1974 Grateful Dead.
Oh, the Wall of Sound.
Are you in the shower now, Chris, or are you still in the basement?
No, I've moved. Oh, Kolon.
No, yeah. I'm in the basement. I hung up some Taiwanese cloth.
I like it. At least you guys are trying. You're trying at least. I mean, that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, so you don't see my underwear.
Barstool had a whole thing yesterday on their podcast where they were reviewing and they were critiquing everyone's background. And so I just want you to know that it's not just me that's insane with the background. It's a big thing.
Good to know. All right. So I'm going to get through the three of us knuckleheads in our normal chit-chat. MacKenzie, welcome. Thank you for joining us. You are our first female college guest. It's not that cool because this is only our 5th episode. Most of you will be the first ever of something. But we start every one of these episodes with kind of a give us your name, rank, serial number. Who are you? Do you have a day job? What do you do in lacrosse? And we'll follow up with questions from that.
Awesome. So my name is MacKenzie Lawlor. I am in my 2nd year as the head women's lacrosse coach at Grand Valley State University, which is a Division II school here in Michigan. Before I was at Grand Valley, I was an assistant coach at Central Michigan for 4 years. I went out and played Division I lacrosse at Robert Morris University. Was a graduate from Okemos and played lacrosse there. Being the head coach at Grand Valley is my full-time job. I'm very lucky for lacrosse to be my full-time job. And then on the side, I also run a girls travel team, Michigan Elite Lacrosse, that we do in the summer, both in Lansing and in Grand Rapids.
Okay, so you're a Bobby Moe alumni, as we affectionately refer to them.
Yeah.
How did you first start playing, and was that first in Okemos? Who gave you your first stick? Who was your first coach? Who was your biggest influence?
Yeah, so lacrosse was new to Okemos when I was younger. Actually, my brother was the first in my family who got involved in the game. The Raleigh family from Okemos moved from Delaware, and so lacrosse was huge out there, and we didn't have a program. And so Dave Raleigh started the program, and with his son happened to be really good friends with my brother, and so my dad got roped into helping with the boys team, and I tagged along and kept clock for the penalties and everything. And so, they were the first family to kind of give me a stick and used to play with my brother in the backyard. And then when they went to bring the sport to the high school, they said that they needed girls lacrosse as well. And so my dad got roped into starting the girls team, and then, played throughout my career at Okemos.
So
what are the Raleighs doing right now? That guy really was.
Dale was everywhere.
Yeah, he's awesome. Is he still involved or not?
He's not. I don't know if they still live in Okemos or not anymore, but they, not only were there all through their son's time, but, even after that, they were still so involved in the Okemos program. And I think that's what made it so strong on both sides for so long, was just the great parent involvement.
Yeah, I forgot about him. Tell him I said hello if you
I will.
So picking up women's lacrosse in mid-Michigan and ending up at Robert Morris, was it a culture shock for you? Did you fit right in? Were most of the girls New England prep school girls? Like, how was your assimilation into that program?
Yeah, most of my team, they were all from the East Coast. So, Philly and upstate New York, Baltimore, a lot of the hotbeds of lacrosse. I was kind of the oddball kid from the Midwest. Especially back then, there wasn't a lot of us who went out to play lacrosse on the East Coast. And so I think I was lucky that I was very, very fast. And so that was kind of how I worked my way onto the field. And, I remember it was so eye-opening, going to play at that level. Like when I went in my freshman year, I didn't even know what a split dodge was. We didn't do that in Michigan back then. You were just fast and could cradle, so you scored. And so I had a lot to learn, but I was really lucky and, able to start every day but one my freshman year with, good coaching and a lot of hard work. And I think, it's exciting with the Midwestern players. I think this is still true that there's so much upside, because you either haven't been playing that long or maybe weren't playing year round or had parents for coaches that were doing the best they could. And so I think, I was the benefit of once I got in more of a structured program, I could really grow as a player.
I love that you said back then as if you're this old legend in the game. The second time we had on Steve Hubble.
Michigan lacrosse has changed a lot. Just the number of high school programs now on the girls' side is amazing. There's so many new programs that weren't there when I was playing, and I think that's just exciting to see the growth so far.
I know. I'm just picking on you because the last guy we had on the second episode, this would have been Steve Hubble's 50th season in lacrosse in Michigan. So,
well, I can't compete with that. So
Not yet.
Not yet. That's right.
So I wanted to kind of get into your transition from player to coach and how you ended up at Central.
Can we do one more history question? Can we do one more history question?
Of course.
MacKenzie, how many times have you eaten at the Tuba Museum before it closed? Remember the Tuba Museum? Is that not something you ate at when you were in Okemos?
No, I never ate there.
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
I'm dating myself. It probably was closed by the time you were. No. Ask your parents.
I will.
It was the Travelers Club International Restaurant and Tuba Museum. And it had a menu that was about that thick, and there was a page for Ethiopian, a page for Thai, a page for British. Like, it was the International Restaurant and Tuba Museum. And Kolon's right.
It was incredible in Okemos.
Yeah, it was legendary.
It was hip before there were hipsters, so.
This is true. I think the owner started collecting tubas, and then his wife wanted to open a restaurant, so they decorated the walls with like 100 different brass instruments. God,
it sounds. I gotta say, it sounds creepy. It sounds creepy.
They lost the restaurant. They lost the restaurant. They lost it because they were booking musical performances in Okemos. They wanted Okemos to become one of the centers of theatrical art, and he lost his restaurant because nobody came to any live performances. So it's a sad story, but if you ever ate there, you'll remember it. So.
Oh yeah, it was legendary. So MacKenzie, how do you get that first NCAA assistant coach's job? Where were you coaching, and how did you kind of get the call to the big leagues as they were starting their program?
Yeah, they had announced at Central that they were going to add a program during my senior year of college. And so actually over winter break, I had sent an email to their senior women's administrator and met with her and just said, I'm about to be a recent graduate, and I really want to get into college coaching. Obviously, this would be a dream job to start as an assistant because of it being close to home and from Michigan. I thought that was exciting to start a new program. And so I met with her, and then over the summer while I was running my travel team, we used to do a college coaches clinic. We'd bring in about 15 to 20 local college coaches, and it was only like, $15 or whatever for players to come in and be able to work with a bunch of different staff. And so Sarah Tisdale, who was at that time the head coach at Augustana, when I had emailed her and invited her to come to the event, she told me that she would, but that she'd be wearing different colors and that it was still private, but she did get the Central Michigan job. Sarah is actually from Lansing. She used to coach high school lacrosse at Waverly and was the Michigan State Club coach for a while. So I had just known her. She was coaching at Waverly when I was playing at Okemos, and had kind of watched her career, being a fellow Michigan, former player and now a college coach. And so I was lucky enough. I volunteered there for the first 3 months while I was starting grad school. Kind of had to prove myself a little bit, and then earned the full-time position after that, and was there for about 3.5 years full-time.
Wow. Any good lessons learned in starting a new program up that you would say to somebody else starting a program up? Make sure you do this and make sure you don't do this. Any lessons learned?
Yeah, I think it's I really admired Sarah's patience in setting up the program, that she really believed in first and the character first and the process. We didn't have any transfers during my time there at Central. We started with 28 freshmen, which playing Division I lacrosse with 28 freshmen, there was lots of eye-opening experiences that year for sure. But I think we really laid the foundation of the culture and focused on what kind of team did we want to be, and then allowed the talent to come when we kind of caught up in the recruiting cycles of the process. And so I think that was just huge, because we were always going about things the right way. And then, once we got a little bit more talent in, I think that really showed in some of the later seasons.
Kolon, I'm going to put you on the spot. That sounds like the exact opposite of what you guys did at Detroit Mercy.
No, we did the same thing, I think. I don't remember. It was a long time ago. I can't remember.
I can't remember last week.
I can't remember last month. So I can't tell you what 12 years ago was like. So.
But your first year was all graduate students and transfers and guys that.
No, they were. Well, Matt brought some guys from Michigan State, but we were a lot of young guys. The young guys were kind of everything. I guess maybe we had 2 or 3 transfers, but not. I don't know. That first year was. I don't know. I don't think we won a game. It was horrible. We had every game was on the road, but this is more. Who cares about me?
Okay, just wondering.
MacKenzie, can you tell me a little bit, just quickly, and we'll wait and get people that are currently at Central. But I think one of the coolest things that you guys did at the beginning, and you've maintained it, is that relationship with the Chippewa tribe. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about that? I'm working on a couple things with some of the Native American tribes in Michigan, where we're going to do some stuff that's in the works. But you guys, can you speak a little bit how that kind of came to be? And I think it's one of the cooler things that's going on up at Central.
Yeah, so some of our associate athletic directors obviously work a lot with the tribe, through different events. And so they were able to connect our coaching staff and our team. We would go out to the museum that they had on the reservation, every other year with the team, just so they could learn a little bit more about the culture and kind of put names to faces of people who were around. And then, once they got to know our team a little bit better, I think they really opened their arms to, allowing us to try and help honor, the history of not only the tribe, but lacrosse and how that's all intertwined. And so one of the things that we first did was we used the 4 colors of their medicine wheel teaching. So it was white, yellow, red, and black. Each color is associated with like a time in your life, a season, and a lot of different, an animal, and a lot of different things. And so they, if you see the central sticks, they're all strung with those 4 colors. I think people think sometimes we're trying to do maroon and gold, and we're just off a little bit in our shades, and they don't realize that it is the medicine wheel teaching. And so we do that. There was a game stick that they had carved from wood and hand beaded with the colors on it, that the players would bring out to the captain's meeting every game. And so I think it just gives a little extra pride, when you're putting on that jersey and what you're playing for, because the connection then becomes personal to the players.
Amazing.
I wasn't laughing at the sticks being the wrong color. I'm laughing at the fact that I'm colorblind, and that is something I would have done. This has happened in my life. Like, hey guys, like my new blue backpack? That's purple, Chris. Oh, okay. Hey, I got this new blue sport coat. That's black, Chris. Okay, never mind. Chris, do you want to kind of share with us what you're going to be doing and working with them, or do you want to wait until it's all official?
We'll do that on another podcast. I think I've got so many questions. for MacKenzie here. MacKenzie, a real important one that I was told I have to ask you about is: are you a Joe Exotic person or are you a Carol Bastion person?
That is a great question. With all this free time I have watched all of Tiger King.
Oh, that's a binge watch right there.
Yeah, it is a binge watcher.
I'm only through 3 episodes, so no spoilers.
Okay. Gosh, I think that's a tough decision. I would have to say Joe Exotica, I think.
Yeah, I'm a Joe Exotic person too. I'm only 3 episodes in too, but
I think Joe is what he is. I think Carol tries to maybe be something she's not, so I'm going to pick Joe there.
That's compliments of Laura Manis for you there, that one.
I was talking with her today. That's funny.
Yeah, that's great. Do we want to get into you guys this year? I know it 3-1 to start out the year. Didn't you guys? You beat it. One of those teams was ranked, if I remember.
Yeah,
am I remembering that?
Yep, Lindenwood. We beat 16-13, and they were number 1 in the U.S. Lacrosse poll, and then 3 in the coaches poll.
Wow, nice work.
Yeah, congrats. That was a huge win. Yeah, I'm a big Emma DeLong fan.
Oh,
She's
yeah.
a U of D girl. She's a nurse, right? Yeah, you're a volunteer. I'm a huge fan of her, and then I know she's working. Yeah, she's working pretty hard right now. I know.
She is. I actually just
since you got her on staff.
Yeah, I dropped some groceries off to her the other day. She had 4 shifts in a row at the hospital, so tried to do my part to help. But she's great. Her younger sister is a freshman for us this year.
Nice! I didn't know that.
The Lindenwood win was really exciting. It's the first time Grand Valley has beat them, and first time we beat a top 3 opponent. Even though it was obviously unfortunate what happened this year with the season, it was really great. I think for our seniors to walk away still leaving a big mark on the program.
I wanted to ask you about this, and this is something we've asked some of the other, people involved. How are your girls doing? How's your team? How are they emotionally? How is their mental health? How are they dealing, coping, everything? Are you having team Zoom meetings like this? What's going on in your guys' world?
Yeah, we practiced the Thursday that all the news broke. We actually, I had got the message from my athletic director about 5 minutes after practice ended that everything would be done. And so I think we were lucky, at least in the fact that we were all together. We heard our women's basketball team was on the road for their NCAA tournament, and they had players seeing it on SportsCenter, come up on TV. And so I think we were lucky that we were at least together. It's obviously heartbreaking. We have 9 seniors, and I think even after the Lindenwood win, we talked so much about being a Final Four caliber team, and beating somebody like Lindenwood proves that we could do that. And so to have the season, now gone was just devastating for them. And so we kind of threw together a senior day event Saturday before everybody left, and, did the flowers and walking with the parents who were in town, and the gifts and speeches and everything that we could, try and give them something special before they, went home and all over the country. So a lot of them were on the East Coast, but we're still checking in with our players. All 3 of our coaches on staff are doing FaceTime calls with everybody. We always have a couple every day. And I think, it's just hard as it is for all of us, adjusting to this new normal of, being at home. And I think as an athlete, so much of your identity is wrapped up into playing your sport. And so, just trying to, find out the new structure of your day. What's the new balance? How can you stay active? How can you try and keep your mind a little bit more positive? So we've still been checking in and everything. They're talking to each other all the time. But I just think it's tough, for everybody, obviously.
Yeah, I think I said this in a different episode. I was supposed to ref Grand Valley versus Western at Kalamazoo on that Saturday before everything shut down. Yeah. And so I went to bed Thursday night, assuming that my kids were going to school on Friday, and that I'd be, Whitmer had her 11 o'clock thing that school was going to be canceled. And I sent an email to Tim Murray and to the Western coach and said, hey, I'm driving out first thing Saturday morning from Clarkston. You've got to let me know if there's any rumor of anything, so I don't drive for 3 hours, pick up another ref on the way, and then get there to the field and you guys say sorry. And yeah, that Friday before I went to bed, it happened. And then it was kind of a, well, we'll just wait and see. And then I just started getting text after text after text from Arbiter and ZebraWeb that this game is canceled, this game is canceled, this game is canceled. You know, two guys that I know don't get enough acknowledgement or credit, and this is I don't know who the assigner is in the women's side for the officials, but my buddy Brian Effinger, who's one of my mentors and is a U.S. lacrosse officials trainer and longtime NILOA guy, he's the assigner for the NAIA, the CCLA, and everything on the men's side. And so once they assign the NCAA, then he gets to try to assign people. And for him, it is just moving logistics of which guys can do which games, and do you not see the same group 2 days in a row. And if I have to get, you know, it's ridiculous how much he put into time and effort trying to get games covered for the month of April, where there were going to be a lot of Saturdays in April where some of us were going to have two games, where we were going to have to do a Friday game and all this stuff. And I feel bad for him because he spent hours of his life stressing over that. And just like that, it's just done. So I think if we can, and the hot topic amongst John and Chris and I has been, if the high school season can be saved, what does it look like? My buddy Bill Schmidt, who's the men's assigner here, or boys assigner here over on the east side, man, he's going to have his work cut out for him. He is going to be crazy trying to get everybody to get all those games in there at once, and then him trying to, you know, assign it. What is your take on the high school, if and can they should have a season? Chris, what's the question you always ask? How many games is too few games before we get to the playoffs?
Well, do you think they should play if they get? Let's say we go back to school. Do you think we can play this year at the high school level?
I think. Oh, sorry, cutting out a little bit. But you know, can you still hear me?
Yeah, you're clean. You're good.
Okay. You know, I think of at least what our girls would have wanted, and if we would have gone back to school at Grand Valley, they would have played, you know, however many games they could play. And so my thought is that the high school players would feel the same way. Obviously, you know, for college, they canceled everything because of the eligibility, you know, problems that come into play. If you play a couple years, now you're losing a season for only a couple years. And, you know, it's not true for high school. And so I feel like I've read some things of, you know, kind of just shrinking everything and maybe just making it a tournament style and just playing, you know, only a couple games per team. You know, I think something is better than nothing as long as it's safe to play and do that, you know, come the time.
So we're go ahead, John. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, anything is going to be beneficial for everybody. I mean, that, you know, the kids just want to play, the girls just want to play. That's the big thing. As kind of a lead into that, you know, with your travel team, you know, that you do over the summer, you know, there's discussions about pushing the high school season back well into June. Chris and I had a podcast we talked about, and really I built out a schedule where, you know, state championships are really June 20th. And so you're bumping up against July. And I know, you know, from the summer clubs, have you had any discussions with any tournaments that you were looking at as a program in the summer and the travel, and what do you expect from that?
Yeah, well, at least for us, all the tournaments that we sign up for, you know, usually have to put deposits down November or December before the summer. And so everything, your schedule-wise, is pretty determined. I think everyone is just waiting and seeing. We actually are at Grand Valley are partnering with the Myers State Games this year, and we'll be running their girls lacrosse tournament. And I've been in contact with their directors, and, you know, we're hoping that this clears in another month or so, and that we're going to be okay to kind of go ahead. I think a lot of those decisions are going to be made last minute. Obviously, for our players in the club, if you're playing, you know, for your school team and you have the ability to do that, we'll change, you know, our tournament schedule based on that. I think most people are going to have been pretty understanding and flexible that if we need to pull out of a tournament, I think, you know, we're pretty consistent with the tournaments we go to. So we have good relationships with their directors. I think they're going to understand, you know, where we are and why we can't make that tournament. But, you know, I think everyone's just hoping, you know, it gets better in 3 to 4 weeks and, you know, hoping for the best. But, you know, we're just kind of wait and see right now. I don't think anyone wants to make a decision, because if they had to decide right now, it would be a bad one. And so we're trying to be hopeful and just wait it out a little bit.
Yeah, it's just going to be predicated on where the high school season ends up. And kind of a follow-up to that piece, as you look at recruiting, you know, you've got that piece where, you know, you could miss an entire girls' season, and that's kind of a two-part question, you know, how that's going to affect your recruiting, but also, what is your typical process for your recruiting? When are you out? What are you looking at? What are you looking for? And really, where are you pulling from, kind of in general for your recruits?
Yeah, to answer your first question, I think luckily for the players who are worried about this, everybody's in the same boat. It's not really like one part of the country is playing games and the other part isn't. So I don't think, anybody is at a disadvantage. I think for the college coaches, we're kind of waiting to see, are we going to be able to recruit this summer at the usual tournaments that we go to? Maybe we usually split them up between June and July. Maybe it's best for us to do all July this year because that's a little safer for the timing. Again, kind of waiting and seeing. There are always fall tournaments, and so I think you'll see a big increase in coaches going to the fall tournaments this year. We're just increasing the number, laying off in the summer, because I think that's going to be the best bet to evaluate players. For us, we're kind of split. We obviously will recruit players at our own events. So players who sign up for our clinics or camps, tournaments, anything like that, we always have eyes on. And then we'll hit a lot of the club tournaments. I personally like watching a lot of high school games, which makes me really hopeful that some of the states nearby will play. Last year we were out in Ohio, Michigan, Indiana, and Chicago watching high school games. I think it's a different dynamic than club, and so I like watching players in that atmosphere in addition to club. So we're hopeful to get out to a couple of those. And I think my philosophy in recruiting is probably a little bit different than what was than Alicia when she was here as the head coach. I think Midwestern lacrosse has really exploded, and I think there's so many hotbeds of lacrosse in the Midwest. Columbus is phenomenal now. Chicago's outstanding. Minneapolis is great on the girl side with the athletes they have. Indianapolis has good players. St. Louis, we always get a couple. Pittsburgh. And so I think for us, my goal is finding the best athlete we can from those areas. I love Grand Valley, but I think if a player's, coming from pretty far away, there might be a reason of why there wasn't a school closer by that either took them or they felt like was a good fit. And so we really look for those Midwestern cities, and then recruiting pretty hard in Canada as well.
Okay, good.
No, it makes definite sense. We lost Chris. I'm not sure if he bailed or what happened, but we'll see if he can get back on.
Maybe like my question. My questions weren't that bad, so I usually offend him later in the show, not really this early.
You're right. Those were not your worst questions. You've gotten far worse than that.
Oh, that was fine.
Matt, getting back to some of the conversations about your current team and what they're dealing with in the high school and the club and everything like that, is there anything that this comes back to my U.S. Lacrosse Michigan role that you think U.S. Lacrosse, and I assume you're a member?
Yep.
Okay, good. It's a question I should be asking all these before I book guests.
You should, yeah. Well, actually, when you book them, you should make sure that they are, because you tell them that you're going to ask them if they're not, right? So that's the play.
And one of the things that I've done in a lot of these is I really want to use this as a way, and this is going to start sounding cliche, but I say in every episode, I want to talk to college, I want to talk to high school, I want to talk to travel, I want to talk to youth, I want to talk to men's, women's, young guard, studs, old guard, you name it, because the three guys hosting this thing are a guy that played at Brother Rice, a guy that played at Birmingham, that coaches at Detroit, and a guy that didn't play but is the father of a high school player at Brother Rice. We don't want this to be the let's talk about the old guard in Birmingham podcast. We want this to be the Michigan podcast. And I think we've kind of started off on the right foot with that, with our first three guests being Steve Hubble, who started programs at Grosse Pointe North and played at Michigan State in the 70s, Jen Dunbar, who's been coaching the girls game, and then we had Tony Quinn, the old Forest Hill Central coach, on, and now we have you, who's one of the young but very well established female coaches, travel coaches. What we're asking all these people is what does the U.S. Lacrosse need to do better, and then what does the Michigan chapter need to do better? And pull no punches. If there's something that you're not happy with your membership or what we're doing, what do you think needs to be fixed? How should we fix it? And then which committee do you want to join to help us fix it?
I think, my dad was on the board for a long time, and so it's been interesting, hearing his experience, going.
Because was he a ref? Was he an
He
official
was.
too?
Yeah,
Okay.
he's not anymore.
That's where I know. That's where I know your last name. Okay.
Yeah. But I think one of the toughest things is, I think, especially in the Michigan chapter, it's the same people again and again who are volunteering, who are investing time, who are trying to get better. And then I think there's people who kind of, just stay in their bubble. And I think there's so many amazing people that I've met, in Michigan and outside, though, through lacrosse. Jen Dunbar being one of them. She coached me in club when I was in high school. And I still remember going down to one of the All-American summer pickup games, and she threw like a behind the back shot, and I was just amazed because I'd never seen anybody do that. And here's Jen, our coach, beating us all up in the practice doing it. I think, how do we kind of get some of the other coaches, to network and be watching these podcasts and be going to coaches clinics and, watching college lacrosse games or watching high-level high school games and, kind of improving the education. And I don't think that's as much on U.S. Lacrosse. I think sometimes that's on the membership or the people who aren't members of, how do you want to learn more about the game and give back to the game? Because I don't think anybody who's invested, in growing Michigan lacrosse has ever regretted it. I just think we need a little more help, from different people coming in.
So one of my goals has been is just basically reaching out to everybody that I can get a hold of, whether they're a parent, a coach, official, you name it. And I firmly believe that the best nonprofits, the best organizations have a board that does overseeing and keeps their hands out of the day-to-day stuff. And that to get on the board, it's not just we need more people. Who do you know? It's who are the highest performers in the committees or who are leading those committees as chairs. And then we offer those committee chairs a chance to join the board as an at-large member or as a voting member, and then elect them up to a position of a president, a vice president, that kind of thing. We're not there yet. But what I'm really hoping is that we can find 50 to 100 people to start filling the committees. And these committees might be one conference call a quarter, or
Right.
we used to do scholarships and we've gotten away from that. If we can start getting more sponsorships, to the sponsorship.
I remember because my dad used to make me read the applications and help him vote for the scholarships as well. So I read many U.S. lacrosse scholarships over my years. I don't know if I'm getting them in trouble for saying that, but I've read a lot of them.
As long as you didn't vote, you're fine. You can read it. You can't vote.
As long as you didn't read your own scholarship letter and get a scholarship that you voted on, I think we're okay.
I did not. Yeah.
Statute of limitations is probably up anyway. But
Can we go back real quick? I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Can we go back? MacKenzie, sorry, I was so interested. My Skype blew up, or whatever this thing is. Zoom blew up on me about the recruiting process. I wanted to do one follow-up. If I had a daughter that was going to Grand Valley, what's the pitch? Give me the quick 2-minute. What's the best part? Give me the 3 best things about going there than playing lacrosse.
My background was in Division I, playing in at Central, and what I love
freeze
about
again?
Oh, sorry, can you hear me?
I think I froze again.
No, you're good.
You're good.
Okay. So, my background was in Division I, and I think what I love about Grand Valley is you get a Division I-like experience. At a big school, we have great facilities. Our athletic programs are really competitive, but you just have that Division II balance. And so for our players, I think they're really lucky that they get to invest in campus. They get to study abroad. They get to be involved in clubs. They get to have tough academic majors. And you're right by Grand Rapids. I think it's one of the best places to be in Michigan. We have our main campus and our downtown campus. And so I think, not only do you get a really competitive academic experience, but, you look around at all of our sport teams, and almost everybody's nationally ranked. Everyone's competing for a national title. I think we're one of the lower achieving sports right now at Grand Valley. And we finished 10th in the country for the rankings this year. And so I think that competitive excellence is a really exciting thing to be a part of.
Wow. What are your 3 biggest majors on the team? The 3 that most girls are involved in.
Number 1 would be biomedical sciences. We have a lot of girls who are interested in OT, PT, PA, med school, dental school. So that's definitely the highest one. And then the other ones would be in the business school. We have a lot of girls who are in marketing and accounting. Both of those majors are downtown. And so I just think the ties that Grand Valley has to the businesses and the hospitals makes for a really great academic experience for those majors.
Cool. All right, let's get back to U.S. lacrosse. Sorry, those were
all right.
on my
Fine.
list.
Thanks, Kolon. We're going to put you on the spot and ask you your 3 selling points for Detroit, Michigan, or Detroit Mercy sometime soon too. But MacKenzie, one of the things that I was saying is, you know, a perfect example would be that scholarship committee. It's a commitment of about 48 hours of the year. You know, the deadline is this date. The applications come in, read them, submit your top 3 or 5 or 10, and then get on a conference call and say who we're going to announce a cash award to. We need to find people that are involved and be willing to do that. You know, the way that it's kind of restructured is we are no longer, as the local chapter, in charge of grants, scholarships, or I'm sorry, the grants that are going to be given out. So in the past, people would send a grant request to the local Michigan chapter. Now they send it to Bryce, who's our regional guy. And I've had this conversation with Bryce, and I was on a call last night with a guy that used to coach at University of Liggett back in the 80s and early 90s. And I flat out said to him, like, yeah, if we have somebody like Summer at Cass Tech that comes to us and says, I'm starting a girls lacrosse program in the Detroit Public School League, yes, that is the kind of first stick program that we need to be involved in. Likewise, this guy's name is Bob. So Bob, if University of Liggett, who has one of the highest tuition prices in the state, comes to us and wants a grant when they've had a program for 30 years, no. Like, that's probably not where we should be. Again, hypotheticals, extemporaneous circumstances aside, maybe there's something different in there, but not extemporaneous, extenuating circumstances aside. But we need people that will be out there on the streets looking for new opportunities to say, you guys want to start a program. Did you know that there's a grant available? Let me help you fill out the paperwork and submit it. Because when Bryce gets these, he's going to come back to us and we can say, hey, John Locy, MacKenzie, and Chris Kolon were our grant committee here in the state. MacKenzie's the one that helped him fill out the paperwork. Let's discuss it. I think stuff like that, stuff like the coaches education program, stuff like the officials recruitment and development is stuff that's already being done in pockets, but not very well coordinated and publicized. And I think that there's a lot of people that if we just can get better communication and just more accountability, it actually physically says, you know, this is our spreadsheet that says you are on this committee and these are your expectations. This many calls a quarter, this many 4 calls a year, 1 committee report a year. If you're involved in the sponsorship group, somebody pick Meyer, somebody pick Kroger, somebody pick Dick's Sporting Goods or Dunham's or whoever. Let's get some corporate requests out there. I think like you said, if it's everybody on the board trying to do all the work won't get done. But if we can find more people. So if this was hypothetically a one-on-one phone call with you and a board member from U.S. Lacrosse Michigan that was saying to MacKenzie Lawlor, where would you like to be involved? Where would you like to be involved? And no, I'm not holding you to this. It's just hypothetical questions.
I would love to be involved, you know, with the coaches education piece. I know that's something I've talked with, you know, some of the other, you know, members or the people who run the coaching U.S. Lacrosse clinics in other regions of the country. A lot of them tend to be college coaches sometimes. And I think, you know, it's a great way to interact with coaches. I think back, you know, I was very lucky, you know, having Bill Praler as a high school coach who had, you know, coached at Michigan State and played at Michigan State and, you know, was luckier than most. And I think, you know, the growth of Michigan lacrosse is amazing, but, you know, people can't find coaches. I get emails at least multiple times a week from people on the west side trying to find youth coaches, trying to find high school coaches, you know, what alumni do we have? What players do we have? And so, you know, how can we get some of these either parents or teachers who've been involved in other sports and they have a good sports background, they just don't know the pieces of lacrosse, you know, how can we get them to feel more comfortable? Because there is just such a shortage, I think, right now in the state.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that. We just had that this past season where 2 of my buddies, a guy that I went to middle school with at St. Hugo and one of my just partners in crime from college, they're both now in the Troy program and one of the Troy youth program coaches moved up to one of the high schools. So they called me in a panic a couple weeks ago. We got to find a coach. We don't know who, what. So what do? I call Kolon. Kolon tells me to talk to Jack Harrop. I call Jack Harrop. I make the introduction. Next thing you know, they got a coach. You know, we're lucky in the fact that we do have so many of our guys at Detroit Mercy, at Oakland University, at, you know, Siena Heights and Michigan State Club and these places that do settle in our area and that they are giving back. Not as many as officials. A lot of guys getting back into coaching. We're going to try to get JD Hess on in the next couple of weeks. He's the new coach at Notre Dame Prep, who played at Birmingham and then played for Kolon at Detroit Mercy and did some coaching with Kolon at Detroit Mercy. You know, his entire varsity and JV staff, I think, is going to be Detroit Mercy players. It's just guys that he knows.
Awesome.
Yeah, and MacKenzie, I think the girls that you're coaching, you know, you guys are probably 3, 4, 5 years away where I think there's going to be just a great boom in girls that are currently playing in college that will be giving back to the game. You know, it's the same thing that happened in guys. You know, so all the good work that you're doing, all the positive experiences that you're giving, those will pay off and expand. You know, it's just the wave's going to hit at some point.
Yeah, and we have a couple. You know, one of our alums, Erica Newman, who was from Rockford, she's now the new head coach at Spring Lake, which is exciting. You know, we've had players coach at Grand Rapids Catholic Central before, and so I think we're having more alumni stay in the area, and so I think that'll be great for Grand Rapids lacrosse just to have, you know, more young women who are able to coach at some level over here on this side of the state.
I do a little bit of research before every episode. I do a little bit of internet stalking. And so I did look at your Michigan Elite website, and I was really impressed that under the coaches list, you had girls that had started playing for you so many years prior that now are back as the first alumni in the program. That's got to be a lot of fun to kind of see the next generation and pay it forward. You know, I don't know if, and I think I told Jen Dunbar this. It was funny because when I went through the transition from a coach, travel team coach, to a referee, like the first 3-4 years of my career going out to the coin toss at a face-off, the captains and the teams I'm reffing are the guys that played for me on a U15 team, you know, travel team a couple years ago. They were my CYO captains at St. Hugo. And it was like, hey, coach, hey, shut up. It's the coin toss. We're supposed to pretend we don't know each other.
Professional,
yeah. With what you have on that side, do the Grand Valley grads and girls normally settle in the Grand Rapids area, or do they kind of bug out and go other places?
It kind of depends. You know, for our senior class this year, we have a couple who are sticking around. You know, I think in the past, we've recruited always a couple girls from Grand Rapids each year. And so those players have tended to stay around. I think a lot of the girls who end up in biomedical sciences and somewhere in the healthcare, they tend to stay around a little bit more just because of the connections that they get, and then that leads to job opportunities. But, you know, we have, you know, players who are going back home to New Jersey. You know, one of our Maryland players got a job in Denver. And so it's probably, you know, a little more than half leave. But I think it's, as we continue to get more Midwestern players, I could see more of them potentially staying, because even though it's not home, you know, you're still closer to home, whereas the East Coast players usually head back, you know, that way.
I can see that. I know with Kolon's program, if you get to Detroit and you're Canadian, you're probably going back to Canada. But we've had a number of guys come here from New York, Long Island, you know, whatever, and they've ended up meeting somebody, settling here. Midwest guys that weren't from the Detroit area originally that do end up staying in Detroit. Coincidentally, I also talked with John Paul, the old Michigan coach, and asked him to give us some names of old players, and he just went, nobody lives here. They're in Ann Arbor for 4 years, and they're out. They come here and they're gone. So,
MacKenzie, how long do you think? I think the boys' game is moving in this direction very quickly for colleges. Where I think if we had to, I think from the University of Michigan all the way to whatever program and collegiate club program. I think we could probably all stay in the state of Michigan and find a lot of competitive players that could compete at a national level. How close do you think we are at the girls' game to where the Michigan girls are good enough where kind of programs can stockpile from local talent?
I think you're getting closer to that stage, but there's just not enough of them. And so,
Right.
There's so many college programs. I mean, if I could take Izzy Skane from Northwestern and Brooklyn Newman from UNC and the Vandermillen girls down at Ohio State, I mean, absolutely. I think you could put all them together on a Michigan team, whether they're Division I, whatever, that team's going to be locked and loaded to go. But I don't think there's enough Michigan players for all of the college teams to pick from to kind of go about that recruiting. I think you just need to weigh your options the same way that recruits have options in schools. You're never going to shoot 100% when it comes to recruiting. Players are always going to pick somewhere else for a different reason. And so I think you have to still cast a little bit of a wider net. But I do think there's a lot more talent from all levels to pull from. And I think it's been great to see Hannah Nielsen in Michigan because her staff is out recruiting local players. You see them at high school games and they're actively looking to try and find the next best Big Ten caliber Michigan kid and keep them at home. And I don't think that was true, under their former coaching staff. And so I think it's great that the coaches in Michigan are respecting the talent that's here.
Cool. And do you think, to kind of follow up on that point about, Michigan not having enough yet getting there, but growing in terms of that, is it the volume in terms of the number of girls playing right now, or is it a talent level? Maybe you've got enough girls, but the talent's not there, or is it not enough girls in general?
I think it's because of soccer. You look at the East Coast and soccer is in the fall. And so you have most of my college teammates, they all played soccer and they played lacrosse. And so I think for Michigan, I think that's going to be the biggest deterrent in this maybe ever happening, is that you have some of the best. I mean, I think of when I was in high school, our soccer team won a national championship my sophomore year. We won our state championship. We won 2 state championships my junior and senior year. How good would those teams have been if we would have put both athletes on the soccer and lacrosse roster together? I mean, it would just be even a bigger super team. And so, I don't see that changing anytime soon with the MHSAA. And I'm not saying that it should, but I think that's going to be, for the boys, that's not a problem. Boys soccer is in the fall. And so I think for the girls, that's going to be a major problem.
I think it's a problem and it should change. I'll say it.
Yeah.
I guess I wasn't even aware that that's what the seasons were outside of state. It was kind of like when the MHSAA flip-flopped, what was it? Girls volleyball and girls basketball, and then it was boys golf and something else flipped. It was just, okay, it makes sense, and there's going to be some growing pains, but, we're getting by and we're getting through with it.
The women's soccer connection is a lot like football to lacrosse. Men's soccer to lacrosse. I have a real issue with it personally, and I would hope that the MHSA would do something about it. I don't think it's really fair. It's not fair, and they don't really care what I think. But you would just see a lot of really great athletes that would excel at both, and there'd be so many great opportunities that we're passing up on for. I don't know what the reason is. So,
I think that
Chris, let me ask one quick question. Then I'll be done for the night. So this will be my last piece. Can we talk a little about the game and really the evolution of the game from back when you were playing in high school to now as we look at it in college? I mean, one of the striking things that I've noticed over the years, I've got a younger daughter who's playing and been playing for a long time, and so. I've been following the women's game a lot more and more, and I'm getting as versed as I can. But, the physicality of the women's game at the college level has really struck me as really, amping up a little bit more and more. Kind of talk about from when you played to where it is today and what those stark differences are and what you see maybe a couple of years down the road.
Yeah, my first year of lacrosse was the first year that they made goggles and boundaries mandatory. So, I never played in the old rules that there was no outside boundary and you just played until the officials stopped, which is crazy to me that even, back then, I mean, that would have been early 2000s that was still a thing. And so, I just think the game has changed tremendously. I think I give the women's sport a lot of credit that we were the forefront in the shot clock. That was something I was a little nervous about when they brought it into the game for the college level, and I love it. I think it makes the game so much more entertaining to watch. There's more strategy that goes involved. I think you've seen a lot more fun games that teams can come back, and it's competitive all the way through. Changes to the draw circle. I really like that they cleaned it up. It was 5 pairs back even when I was in college, and then moving to 3. I think that's been a lot cleaner. I like the possession on the draw, similar to the men, that you're held in the box until the possession is gained. So I think that's really added to the specialty of the draw. But I think the speed and physicality, as the sport is more popular on a national level, you're just getting more athletes to play. And so, you watch the games on Big Ten Network and you have powerhouse programs. It looks a lot different than the high school games that you see in Michigan, just because we're not obviously there, talent wise. But, I think it's really fun for the players to see, what can they aspire to be? What level can they aspire to play at? It's definitely a lot more physical. And that was a big adjustment for me going from high school lacrosse to college at the Division I level, for sure. But I think it makes the sport a lot more fun to play as long as the skill level is there and the players can handle it. And so I understand, I think people get frustrated with the officials that there is a lot of gray area, I think, on the women's side. And, but I think you have to trust that, the officials are understanding that this level game, I had to laugh, when we were out in St. Louis playing Lindenwood, our crew was the same. And so we played Lindenwood at 5 p.m. and then we played a different team, Maryville, at 11 a.m. the next day before we came home. We had 2 of the 3 officials were the same. Could not have been a more different officiated game, but it was because, you had 2 top 10 opponents in one game, so we can let a few more things go, and, it was a little bit even. And then, we played a second-year program. And so I think when coaches get frustrated with that, you have to understand that there's a reason for that, but then be excited, when you've either proven yourself enough as a player or as a program that you do get to compete at that little more physical level.
It's a good take. I like that. I appreciate that.
Awesome.
Thank you.
How much are you seeing the evolution of the sticks and now mesh pockets coming into the girls' game change the way that they're playing?
We've seen it definitely on the draw. I will say, we went up against, 2 top 10 teams that had a specific draw stick, and our players don't like the draw stick, and they use their own. And, we won over 60% of the draws in both games. So, I think a lot of those, there's benefits. I think sometimes people get a little too hung up on the new gimmicks of the game. And unless you really understand, why you're using mesh, what are the benefits of that, how is that going to change your shot, I don't think it helps as much. Obviously, the equipment is night and day different than from when I first played. I remember I had a Drouin, I think it was a velocity stick that had like a rubber band on it that was supposed to help torque your stick, and didn't make any sense, but we thought it did at the time. But so I think it's been exciting, and I think the new technology and the new rules that they've passed is what has allowed the women's game to evolve with some of the shots that you're seeing now and the creativity with the stick work. I think we're getting closer to where the men are with that, just because of our equipment is catching up a little bit.
And that leads us into, obviously, the helmet question. I mean, with the athletes that we talked about, with the technology and the speed of shooting that you're seeing in the women's game, I mean, do you think that is imminent?
Personally, I hope not. I don't want to play with helmets. I think the research is pretty inconclusive from what I've read down in Florida that didn't really help. And I think for most sports, the men's and women's games are very similar. You think of basketball or hockey. I like that women's lacrosse is its own game. I love watching the men's game, but I also love the finesse of the women's game. And so I think, helmets is going to take away from that. And so I think, as long as you're educating, and officials are working with shooting space in 3 seconds and some of those major calls, I honestly think sometimes it's more dangerous at the high school level because the players don't know the rules. In college, players know, okay, shooting space is coming. I know to pump, and they're more skilled. Right. So I don't see as many concerns of that. When I'm at Grand Valley, there's more concerns that kind of come into play when I'm coaching club, and the level quite isn't there.
Yeah, in the youth, especially in the youth game with girls just running around and balls flying in and what's going on. But no question. But and I agree with you. I mean, the beauty and really the essence of the women's game is the stick work, right? I mean, the ball shouldn't hit the ground very often, and that's why I enjoy watching that game. And it's just a different game. And so putting helmets would then open it up to where, now you get the bigger, stronger, where you now got more latitude to be that physical player, and it takes away from the stick work.
Yeah, MacKenzie, I'm totally on the same page. Next time you're in the Detroit area, I'm going to have you stop by Sean Higgins at Stenson Miller. We worked a lot with Izzy skating this summer.
Oh, awesome.
I'm very, very fortunate to do spend a lot of time with her. She's just impressive. Probably she's more impressive than Sergio Perkovic when it comes to kids I've worked with one-on-one. And I would tell you to take a couple minutes and really look at shot mechanics with the mesh.
Yeah,
it can make a difference, but you do need to make sure you're adjusting some of what you're doing
for sure.
a little bit. And I feel on the catching side and a little bit of the control side, you get a better advantage. So next time you're in town, I'll make sure that gets set up with you, and you can spend some time with Sean, and he can kind of show you what that's about, because it's a pretty cool. When you for teams, we worked with a couple girls, and it really, you have to kind of get them to readjust their thought process a little bit, because they've been doing it the way they've been doing it, and you can get a little bit more accuracy. It's pretty cool.
Well, and I think to your point, you need to be able to educate your players on their own stick maintenance. And so for us, our players are not. I play with the mesh stick at practice. That's what I use. But for the wear and tear, and for them to know what to do, we're not quite there yet. So if you ever want to help do a Zoom session with them on how to use a mesh stick, sign us up. 100%.
We'll set that up. I'm not the guy. Sean Higgins is the guy. I can't string a stick. I throw things at him, and he takes care of stuff for me. So I'm sure he'd be happy to help you.
All right, so that will bring me to several points. One, as we're talking about future guests, we probably should have Higgins on to do some kind of breakdown of stick maintenance and mechanics. He doesn't sponsor the show. He's not endorsing the show. We all joke about how many Stenson Miller shirts we have, but Sean is one of those guys that has given more free sticks, more free advice.
Do you have this one? Chris, you don't have this one.
I don't have that one, but
there you go.
I do have the 313 undershirt. So
I got that one.
I'm going to share my screen real quick. Can you guys see this?
Nope.
Nothing?
Yes.
Okay.
There we go.
There you go. Yep.
So this is the U.S. Lacrosse Michigan Twitter account, USL_Michigan. And one thing that we've been doing is, me and some of the guys that I played against back in the day, our knuckleheads and board on Twitter, we've been just digging into our archives. So Justin Ronayne, he played at CC, played at, I think, Ithaca, and then was a coach at Cranbrook. He found his old jersey.
That's awesome.
I found the program from the 1993 MSLC or AC championships, and it's got all the rosters in there of all the teams from that year, and every state champion winner. Mike Costello somehow found the 1980 rule book, and apparently he had a label maker, because it says Mike Costello on it in the label. And then
he's got problems. He's got problems. I mean, he knows it. I've told him.
Well, why do you put labels on something? Because you have a label maker, darn it.
Well, of course, but it's 1980 again, too. I mean, let's date the thing, too.
Moving on.
Yeah, and then I found one of my old first sticks. This is an Ullman Lacrosse, and we always joke about the Ullman legend and catalog. So I'm going to challenge you that go find your old stick with the rubber band on it. Go find some of your old gear and tweet this out.
Okay.
When we post this, we will share it on social. We will tag you with your social accounts. Please retweet it. We're trying to build up kind of an audience. And as far as there's also that we have the Facebook page for US Lacrosse Michigan, which is facebook.com/USL Michigan. And then we also have the YouTube channel where this will be going up. So we finally have our Apple Podcast station approved. We got to figure out how to get on Stitcher and a couple other things, but it's coming. But this will be on YouTube by probably sometime Friday night, Saturday morning. Questions as we kind of wrap this up. Jen Dunbar was the one that told us, you have to talk to MacKenzie Lawlor. And we're trying to make sure that this is diverse, and it's not just I could put a bunch of old 1992, 93 Brother Rice guys on here, and those guys all coach in the area, but nobody cares.
Yeah. No, Mackenzie's way more interesting. She's been awesome. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
I agree.
Who do you think we should talk to? And this can be people in Okemos, this can be people in Grand Valley, people at Central, women's, men's side, legends, players. Who should be on our list?
I guess I'll give you three that come to mind quickly. One, I would say Marianne Meltzer, who was a coach at Detroit Mercy. She's now at Lawrence Tech. I think she never talks about her amazing playing career at Maryland. You'd never know she was a player of the year, an All-American there. And I think she has done so much for lacrosse, in Michigan, and I think she's doing amazing things at Lawrence Tech, and she's been a good mentor to me for a long time. So I think she's great. Sarah Tisdale, my old boss at Central Michigan. She's got a great personality. She's a blast. I miss working with her all the time. She'd be a super fun guest to have. And then somebody on the west side, I would say, would be Mike Emery. He's the high school coach at Rockford for the girls. And obviously, just with their state championship run, I also think they do an amazing job with their parent involvement and developing players. You have players who are starting at UNC, who've gone to Ohio State, who are going to Colorado. I mean, they've just really, some of our best players at Grand Valley in the history have all been from Rockford. And so I think, they've just done great things, and they were one of the first programs to really expand, outside of Detroit and, be a competitive program.
Mike's name's come up several times. I've reached out to him by email, and he and I have played email tag and just haven't lined up the right date and time. But you're the second person. Jen definitely mentioned to reach out to him as well. And she had an interesting take that she looked at that a lot of the East Side dominant coaches have been female on the girls' game, and a lot of the dominant coaches on the West Side have been male. And she was kind of wondering about the dynamics of is how they run their programs or their practices, or is there anything in there? So that might be an interesting one, is to grab a couple of them and do kind of a showcase down the road, and put four of them on here as kind of a round table, and let them ask each other stuff, and I can just kind of moderate or be a fly on the wall for it. All right, wrapping up, favorite memory as a player, favorite memory as a coach.
Oh, good question. Favorite memory as a player was our first state championship at Okemos. We had an awesome run. My last 2 years, we went 54-0. We didn't lose a game, but the first state championship was just outstanding. It was kind of cool when we all started. I started in 7th grade, but when I was in 8th grade, for school, they made us do some assignment of, what do you want to accomplish when you're in high school and everything else. And they mailed it to you when you were a senior. Well, I put on the letter that I wanted to win a state championship in lacrosse. And so that was pretty cool that, we were able to make that happen. And my dad was an assistant coach for our team at that time. So he was on the sidelines, and, that was a great moment. I think Please
tell me you still have that letter and it's framed somewhere.
I don't know. I'll have to ask my parents. We have a lot of Okemos lacrosse memorabilia. So I know I have the old jersey. I know I have old sticks. We have lots of that I can dig up. I don't know about the letter. We'll have to see.
I'm challenging you. Find it and frame it and put it in your office.
So that was definitely a cool memory. As a coach, it's tough to say this with perspective, but I think the Lindenwood game right now is a highlight for me. And I think what was so cool, I'm close with both of their coaches. Jack and Brian are great. And they just really complimented our team on how prepared we were, and, kind of the mentality that we took. We went on a 6-1 run to start the game. And I think, for our players to finally we've always been competitive, I think, at Grand Valley, but we've never quite gotten like a staple win. And so, that was just amazing. It was also, I felt like, the longest game of my coaching life. I looked up and it was 6-1, and 7.5 minutes had gone by in the first half. And I about had a heart attack, and I thought, how am I going to be able to coach the whole rest of this game if we've only had 7.5 minutes go by? And, you feel like you've been out there for 2 hours, just with how, I think, stressful and exciting the game was. So that'd have to be the highlight so far.
Jen, we said we'd keep you for an hour. It's been an hour. You've been fantastic. You've really taught me a lot about kind of the women's game in the process. We will continue to do this. someday we're going to get back to our normal lives.
Can I do one more question now? One more question?
No.
I've got 4, but I'm going to go with, give me your favorite restaurant in Grand Rapids. Restaurant or bar or both?
That's a good question. What's my favorite restaurant? I'd have to probably go with Bistro Bella Vita. I live right downtown Grand Rapids, and that's right around the corner from my apartment. I love Italian food, so it's definitely my most frequent restaurant I go to, but also one of my favorites.
All right, we don't have a time limit, Kolon, so go ahead. Ask the other 3 too.
Oh, no, I'm done. I wanted to hear, I was supposed to ask about your lake house.
Oh, yeah. We have a cottage up in the Upper Peninsula. It's about 40 miles west of the bridge off US 2. So it's on the Hiawatha Sportsman's Club. So it's 35,000 acres that are privately owned by a group. My mom's mom, her family's been going up there since like the 30s. And so we have different places.
Up and left?
Yep.
So Grand Marais? Is that
so it's in Nobbin-Way, Engadine area.
Where is it compared to like the mystery spot?
Probably another 30 minutes down the road.
Okay.
Yeah. But we always went up there when I was younger. You know, we fish up there, we 4-wheel, water ski, the whole thing. And that was always a fun place to go growing up. We play some lacrosse on our paddle boards. My brother and I will pass back and forth on a hot day, which is nice, but it's a great spot to be with family.
And are you a hunter or?
I don't hunt. We'll go to the shooting range and shoot like clay pigeons and stuff. But where our family fishes probably more than hunting.
And whenever you want to invite somebody from Detroit, I love the UP.
Chris will.
How much cooler did she just get, right? I mean, she's already super cool, but the UP thing just made you off the charts in my book.
I thought for sure your next
Coach Kolon will freeload whenever you ask.
Okay, so I'll ask a follow-up question. What do you order when you go to Clyde's?
Oh, I'm just a big milkshake girl at Clyde's. I love their milkshake. So I'm a fries and dip them in the milkshake.
Fries in the milkshake. You freak. That is awesome. All right. Well, I really thank you for coming on and spending some time with us. I'm going to invite everybody we're going to share this on our YouTube channel, and then we're going to share it on our Facebook page and our Twitter account. We hope to have by Monday all the episodes on our Apple podcast list. You can subscribe to them as well as through Google and as well through Spotify and anywhere else that we can put out there. So once we promote this episode, please promote yourself. Anybody else that has feedback, email me, president@michiganlacrosse.org. I've been hearing some stuff through friends about great job. Even U.S. Lacrosse, Chris Kolon and John Locy, I want you to know this. Somebody at U.S. Lacrosse reached out to me and said, you guys are the role model for what other chapters should be doing right now. So
there you go.
That's scary. Yeah,
That's terrible.
Pat myself on the back. But we did get some interesting feedback about we have to watch our language and I shouldn't be drinking wine during episodes. So we're going to keep going. But if anyone has any feedback for us, positive, a guest we should have, a question we want, maybe we'll start doing that. When we know that we're going to have a guest on, we'll tweet them out and see if people want to tweet back questions for them. That could be dangerous, but we'll see. I mean, like I said, if we can't play, we can't coach, we can't ref right now, we can at least talk about the game.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks, MacKenzie. You're amazing. Thanks for everything that you do.
Thank you.
On behalf of everybody at the podcast, everybody stay safe. We love you, and we'll talk lacrosse with you soon.